I've met people with medical conditions like cancer that wound up losing their jobs, didn't have health benefits, lose their housing. There are people with mental illness and substance abuse, but let me just tell you something, April. If I was in a tent for a week, I might have both.
You know, I get in this job to talk to some very fascinating people, but today I am talking to someone who is priceless. And I say she's priceless because when I go on the road and speak and I talk about women with my new book, Black Women Will Save the World, and Anthem, I think about two women or a couple of women really in politics. But we're talking to one of those women today. And I talk about how valuable we are. And we don't have a value at all because Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, is the prime example of that. The man she ran against, Rick Caruso, threw $100 million plus at her to defeat her. She's priceless. She won. How you like that? How do you like that?
110 million to my 15 million.
That's still a lot of money and a lot of commas and zeros, but you won against all of that. Dark money, trying to smear your name, but you won. Mm-hmm. And some of your campaign, the promises in your campaign were about ending homelessness in Los Angeles and the crime issue. Mm-hmm. And just this weekend, you and I were both in Los Angeles at the Image Awards, and it was raining profusely, something that we don't see in Los Angeles particularly. Floods everywhere. I mean, some parts of the Image Awards were flooded out. The red carpet was flooded, squish, 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 for real. And, you know, and the homeless were out there. And I was thinking about you and the homelessness and the rain in this moment. So talk to me about your efforts right now in this moment with the flooding. And then let's get into the homelessness and crime.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, April, it's so wonderful to connect up with you again.
Yes.
It's the many years talking to you and
yes.
Washington, DC, so I'm glad we'll stay connected. You know, you mentioned the storms and you mentioned the Image Awards, and I want you to know throughout the entire Image Awards, I was sitting behind you texting because we were getting people sheltered all through that evening.
Wow.
We were worried that on a normal day when the weather is good, 3 to 5 Angelenos die in those tents every day. And you can imagine LA, we're not used to the cold. And we even had snow in parts.
Yes, you did. I saw the flurries. And I kept saying, is that snow? They're like, oh, no, it's not snow. I said, yes, it is. I saw some flurries in the hotel.
Well, that's because many Angelenos grow up into adulthood and might not ever see snow. So for us, this was very traumatic. And then you can imagine the numbers of people who were at risk for hypothermia, which you can die from. And I know we don't have the count yet, but I know when the count is done over the next few days, we will find out that many Angelenos died on the street. And so what we opened up emergency shelters. And as I mentioned to you, I was dealing with that throughout the entire show, because in our city of 3.8 million people, we have 47,000 people who sleep in tents all over the city every night. And as I mentioned, several of them die. Black people are 8 to 9% of the population of Los Angeles. We are over 34% of the people who are in those tents. Latinos in Los Angeles are 49% of the population, 44% are in tents. So that's 74% being Black or brown. So this is an issue of abject poverty, but it's also an issue of race.
Right. And I did hear you behind me. Literally, I heard you and your assistant talking. And but I was trying to, you know, navigate watching the people there. Sorry. But I did hear you. I did. No, not sorry. I mean, you were working. You were representing the city, and you were working, and they called you out, you know, to celebrate you for the moment. But you were, I can indeed attest that I heard you behind me. I don't know. I wasn't trying to listen, but I could hear you working. But with that said, you know, we've had conversations about the homelessness in Los Angeles, and that was one of your campaign promises. What in reality do you believe, knowing the statistics, what in reality do you believe that you can turn around in the next, let's say, 2 years when it comes to the homelessness in Los Angeles?
Well, first of all, you are correct. It was the reason why I ran. And because I was very worried that Angelenos were so angry about this issue, we've taxed ourselves twice and the problem just mushroomed. And then you know what comes next? If people don't feel that there is a solution, they then say, just get rid of these people, which leads to moving them, but it also leads to arresting them. And so I do believe that I can do in the next couple of years is significantly reduce the number of tents that we have on our streets by getting people housed immediately. On my first day after I was sworn in, I didn't even go to City Hall. I went straight to our Emergency Operations Center, which is where, like, if you have floods or a major weather event, all of the city agencies come together. Well, to me, 47,000 people being asleep on the street with 3 to 5 of them dying every day, to me, that is an emergency. So I went to the Emergency Operations Center and I placed the city in a state of emergency. I called together all of the city agencies and I essentially said, we are going to deal with this like it is an emergency. And so we immediately began getting people out of tents and into motel rooms, capitalizing on the lessons that we learned during the pandemic. April, I will tell you that 30 years ago in South Central LA, we were trying to take over motels that we knew what was going on in the motels in South Central, okay? There are no tourists there. So we thought we could reduce crime as well as get people housed. But it took a pandemic for the city to realize, yes, motels, we can do that. And so we have been leasing out motel rooms to put people in temporarily while permanent supportive housing comes online. And because voters voted for ballot initiatives many years ago, and it takes a number of years for the housing to be built, thousands of those units are coming online now. But we need to not have people wait in tents while that housing comes online. We need to get them off the streets immediately.
You're still not out of the woods when it comes to the weather right now. And yeah, landslides. I mean, I just watched this morning a guy stuck on the freeway with a convertible. He was on the top of the convertible because he was stuck. And I mean, we literally, I mean, I know a lot of people, the planes were diverted. I almost didn't get there, you know, because of the weather from the middle section of America all the way over to Los Angeles, and even it was all over the country, really. But what happens? What are you going to do with the landslide and that soaked ground? Because there's potential for so much more after all of this is settled.
Well, you're absolutely right. And just to add to it, one of the things that contributes to the flooding are fires that happened many months ago. When you have fires first, and then you have heavy rains, that adds to the mudslide effect. And so I will tell you that it was worse the last episode of rain earlier in the year. Just think about this, April. In the month of January, we had more rain in 1 month than we did the entire year of 2020. Wow. Los Angeles and California has been under drought conditions, severe drought conditions for the last several years. And so I am hoping that we've had so much rain and more to come that we could actually, that could be one crisis that could be somewhat averted during my early administration. Maybe we don't have to be under severe drought conditions. And what I mean by that is that you're only allowed to water your lawns a couple of times a week, and you're encouraged actually to get rid of your lawns, to do drought-resistant landscaping. That's how severe it is in Los Angeles. So hopefully this will help us a little bit in the long run. Black leaders need to get out of denial and recognize that this is devastating. These are our people on the street.
Yeah. So how much is it mental health? How much is it mental health?
Well, you know what? Let me just briefly say people are there for a lot of reasons. You have veterans. You have people that are literally working full-time jobs in tents because they can't afford housing. You have people that are excluded from housing because they were formerly incarcerated, or maybe they had a conviction that didn't allow them to rent a house. You have children. You have thousands of children. Moms might have been fleeing domestic violence or just lost their housing because they lost a job. I've met people with medical conditions like cancer that wound up losing their jobs, didn't have health benefits, lose their housing. There are people with mental illness and substance abuse, but let me just tell you something, April. If I was in a tent for a week, I might have both. So it's a chicken and the egg a lot. Did you have a mental health problem or a substance problem before you became homeless?
Yeah.
Or did you develop that after you were trying to survive on the street? The women on the street wear 2 and 3 pairs of pants to protect themselves from rape. So I would love for you to see this because we need to ring the alarm bells. We talk about police violence. April, 3 and 4 people are dying here every day on the streets. Far more people are dying because of homelessness than dying because of police violence. But we don't want to, as a people, we're not ready to admit that this is a serious problem in our population. Just like 30 years ago, we didn't want to admit the disproportionate impact that crack was having on our folks.